I tell thee plainly, everything that is, every mote of dust, every star that burns, every world that turns, every creature that draws breath or writhes in the lightless deeps, all of these are but the dreams of Azathoth, the fragmentary and unintended extrusions of its mindless hunger. The universe is not a creation, it is an accident. Before the earth was fashioned, and before the stars burned in the firmament, and before time itself had been divided into moments and eras and ages, there was the void. Let the reader understand that this void of which I speak is not the mere absence of substance, as the philosopher conceives of emptiness, nor is it the darkness of an unlit chamber, which is only the privation of light. It is a void that is itself a presence, a vast, animate, and purposeful nothingness that existed before existence, and that shall persist when all that exists has been consumed and forgotten. In the tongue of the outer spheres, whose accents no human throat can faithfully reproduce, this primordial state is known by a sound approximating Azathoth, though the name, as rendered in human script, captures no more of the reality than the scratching of a beetle upon a stone captures the roar of the sea. For Azathoth is not merely the name of the void, it is also the name of that which dwells at the center of the void, and which is itself the void's animating principle, the blind idiot god, the nuclear chaos, the daemon sultan who sits upon a throne of darkness at the uttermost center of infinity, lulled by the thin, monotonous piping of flutes that are not flutes, played by things that are not hands. I tell thee plainly, everything that is, every mote of dust, every star that burns, every world that turns, every creature that draws breath or writhes in the lightless deeps, all of these are but the dreams of Azathoth, the fragmentary and unintended extrusions of its mindless hunger. The universe is not a creation, it is an accident, a byproduct of the idiot thrashings of a thing that knows not what it does. And when Azathoth stirs in its black throne and the piping falters for the space of a heartbeat, then worlds blink out of existence as a candle is snuffed. And the beings upon those worlds perish, without ever knowing that the ground beneath their feet was nothing more substantial than a sleeping god's twitch. The sages of old, knowing nothing of these matters, imagined that the world was fashioned by benevolent powers for the benefit of man. Even the wisest among them supposed that the cosmos was an ordered place, governed by reason and sustained by purpose. I say to thee that they were wrong in every particular, and that their error was not merely one of degree but of kind. The cosmos is not ordered. It merely appears so from the infinitely small vantage of the human mind, in the same way that a man standing upon a grain of sand might suppose the desert to be flat. I set down these words in Damascus, in the house of Yaqub al-Mansur, who gave me shelter when no other would, and who does not know the nature of the manuscript I composed beneath his roof by the light of a single lamp. Outside, the muezzin calls the faithful to prayer, and I hear them moving in the streets, these men who believe their God is watching over them. I envy them. I envy them. As a blind man envies those who have never seen a fire, for what they have never perceived cannot burn them. But I have looked upon the truth, and the truth has looked back, and neither I nor it shall ever be the same. I write these things not to terrify, though terror is the natural and proper response of any sane mind to the facts of its situation. I write them because that which is not acknowledged cannot be survived. The man who does not know he walks upon a bridge of ice above an abyss will not step carefully. The man who does not know the shape of the predator cannot evade it. Humanity walks upon the thinnest of crusts above an ocean of primordial chaos, and it is my sorrowful duty to report that the crust is not as thick as we had supposed, and that there are things swimming in the ocean below that have from time to time, broken through. The void, I have said, is animate. This does not mean that it possesses intelligence, for intelligence implies form, and the void is prior to form. It does not mean that it possesses will, for will implies desire, and desire implies a distinction between the self and the thing desired, and in the void there is no such distinction. What the void possesses is something for which no language of man has an adequate word, a quality that partakes of hunger and of dreaming simultaneously, a reaching outward that is also a collapsing inward, an eternal restlessness that is also an eternal torpor. The nearest analogy in human experience is the state of a man in the grip of a fever dream, thrashing, moaning, burning with visions that have no coherence and no purpose, generating worlds within his delirium that seem vivid and real to any creature unfortunate enough to be dreamed into existence within them, but which are, from the perspective of the dreamer, nothing at all. This is what we are. This is what all of this is. The stars, the worlds, the void between them, and the tiny, scurrying things that live upon the surfaces of the worlds and imagine themselves to be important, all of it is the fevered dream of a mindless god. And the dream has no meaning, and the dreamer does not know that it dreams. It was in the 7th year of my wandering in the Roba el Khaliyeh, the empty quarter, that great desert which the Bedouin shun and the wise man does not enter, that I first perceived the truth of the void. I had been drawn southward by rumors that the tribesmen spoke of only in whispers, tales of a city without a name, older than memory, and whose towers could be glimpsed at certain hours when the heat shimmer parted like a curtain and the true shape of the desert was revealed. At the center of this depression, half buried in the drifted sand, I found the stones. They were not of any mineral I recognized. They were black, but not with the blackness of basalt or obsidian. They were black, with the blackness of a void, an absence that the eye perceived as color, only because the mind demanded some interpretation of what it beheld. They were warm to the touch, though they lay in shadow, and they vibrated faintly, as if somewhere far below, at some inconceivable depth, a heart of enormous size was beating. I cleared the sand from around the largest stone, and found that it was not a stone at all, but the capstone of a stairway that descended into the earth. The steps were too large for human feet. Each was as wide as a man is tall, and I was obliged to lower myself from one to the next, as a child descends from a chair. I descended for what seemed many hours, though I cannot be certain, for my sense of time grew disordered in that place. The air did not grow warmer, as one would expect in a descent below the earth, but rather colder, with a cold that did not seem to belong to any natural climate, but rather to the cold of empty space. The cold between the stars. And with the cold came a sound, faint at first, so faint that I mistook it for the ringing of my own ears, but growing steadily as I descended, until at last I recognized it for what it was. It was a piping, a thin, high, monotonous piping, as of a flute played by some lunatic musician who knew only a single note and had been playing that note since before the world began. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It rose from the stone beneath my feet and fell from the darkness above my head and pressed against my skin like the touch of cold water. And as I listened, I understood with a certainty that bypassed the intellect and lodged itself directly in the marrow of my bones that this sound was not a sound at all, but the audible edge of something far vaster, a vibration that permeated the very structure of reality, the background hum of the cosmos itself, which is nothing other than the echo of Azathoth's eternal and mindless dreaming. There is a passage in the Pinacotic manuscripts which addresses this very point. I translate it here as faithfully as the medium of human language permits. When the pipers cease, the dreamer stirs. When the dreamer stirs, the dream trembles. When the dream trembles, the stars fall from the sky like dead leaves from a winter tree, and the seas boil, and the mountains crumble, and the thin skin of the world peels back to reveal the roiling dark beneath. The void is not behind us, but beneath us. It is not a thing of the past, some primordial emptiness that was filled when the world was made and ceased to be relevant. The void is here. The void is now. It underlies every stone, every sea, every breath of air. It is the substrate upon which the illusion of reality is painted, and the paint is thin, and in certain places the paint cracks, and what lies beneath shows through. At the center, Azathoth, the mindless source of all. Dancing about the center, the outer gods, mindless echoes of the mindless source. Moving among them and yet apart from them, Nyarlathotep, the one conscious intelligence among the primal powers, the one who knows what all of this is and takes pleasure in the knowing. But Nyarlathotep is different from the other dancers at the court of Azathoth, and the nature of that difference is one of the most terrible mysteries in the entire corpus of forbidden knowledge. For Nyarlathotep knows. Nyarlathotep thinks. Nyarlathotep enjoys. And beyond all of these, scattered upon the worlds and in the spaces between the worlds, sleeping in drowned cities and frozen wastes, and the lightless places below the crust of the earth, the great old ones. And this, let the reader understand, is the greatest and most terrible of all the truths I have to impart. They are not dead. They are not gone. They are here, beneath our feet, beneath our seas, waiting. And they are patient, for they are eternal, and time means nothing to a thing that does not die. And now, I must set down my lamp, for the hour is late, and the sounds outside my window have changed. The muezzin has long since fallen silent, and the streets of Damascus are empty, and there is a wind blowing from the south, from the direction of the desert, from the direction of the places I have been, and the things I have seen, and in that wind I hear, very faintly, as one might hear the memory of a sound rather than the sound itself, the piping. Always the piping. It follows me. I shall continue tomorrow, if tomorrow comes. There is much yet to write, and I do not know how much time remains to me. Something knows that I am writing this. Something has known since I first set stylus to parchment, and it is, I think, amused.